And we are on 3, 2, and 1. Happy May. Mental May is underway. I'm Lady Wu. This is the Abby Award winning Vital Show. And I have like my favorite. I can't say that because other people will get mad. but so I have my favorite crew members in today.
I was gonna say, I know
and
where your heart is.
and this is one of my like almost my favorite topic, and I think it's a lot of people's favorite topic. Like you all know, when we get into DMR, which normally stands for dating, mating, and relating. I mean, the phone lines are lit, the statuses are jumping. Everybody can relate to this conversation. It's so relatable. So that's what we're doing tonight. It's the third Sunday in the month of May, and I have with me. Introduce yourselves.
It's your boy Ready Eddie.
Hey, it's your girl, Counselor Courtney.
All right. So the beautiful thing here is three licensed professional counselors. Woo!
Hey, say it
but
one more time for the people in the back, because I don't know if they know about your official new title, Lady Wu.
yeah, three licensed professional counselors. So no longer associate licensed counselor where you have to have somebody like over you. I'm there. Okay, so great. We call our own shots. And I think the benefit to our listening audience is that, the credentials make it real. It makes it real not only for us and the people that we serve in a private setting, but it makes it real for our listeners because we're not just giving you opinion per se. We're not just giving you a lot of fluff. We're not saying that this is like a lot of evidence-based stuff that we're about to discuss. So I would definitely advise you guys to get your notebooks out, be listening closely if you have any concerns about your relationship when it comes to mental health. This is the show to do it. These are the people to do it. In this capacity, I normally serve as the host of the show. So I kind of take off that hat and leave it to my peers. But I think today we'll all jump in and really just dive into this topic. So, first of all, Mental Health Awareness Month. What does this month mean to each of you?
So I'll start. May is my birthday month, and so
Hmm.
over the past couple years, I have just taken this month to just make it look the way that I would like it to look. And fortunately, I can kind of do that and step away from doing so much work or just so much of other obligations for other people or obligations that I've committed to. And so to me, that's a huge piece of taking care of my mental space is just doing some things for me. And that's not always synonymous with self-care. We can go into a whole nother conversation on another day about just the idea of the true definition of self-care. But I think to me, it's when you put Mental May out there, people are their ears are heightened to all of the mental concerns that people are having and just being able to have those conversations. So to me, it's just a month where we can have those conversations in a space where people are open. And personally, it's just kind of uh, me just doing what I want to do, how I want to do it. And that helps kind of fill me up, renew, and refresh my own energy.
Okay. Eddie, thank you for that, Courtney.
For me, I think it's evident in our society that mental health is becoming, society is becoming more and more aware. And so for me, every May is just a good opportunity to gauge how many more people in our society are really looking to take care of their mental health. And so for me, it's about spreading that awareness. It's about joining in on people that's spreading that awareness. It's about, having conversations that need to be had. And so for me, May is just a good opportunity to, identify more deeply with the profession I chose, with this thing I do, with other people who either may be in it or who may want to participate in it because they need it,
Hmm.
or just advocating for more systems to include mental health components to them. So for me, it's just like a whole get together of let's get ourselves right, basically.
Okay. For me, a Mental Health Awareness Month is about having the conversation, like really having a tough conversation. As with any other awareness month, it's the opportunity for those in the field or those who are affected by to really speak out about what they live with and what they do. like with any other awareness month, that's when you really learn about it. It's a time for education. It's a time for advocacy. It's a time to really just bring these conversations to the forefront to show the support for whatever your thing is. And that's our thing. Like mental health is our thing. And I look at it as an opportunity to make it everybody's thing. Like this is the month where I make sure that you know that no matter what it is that you're thinking, that you're feeling, or that you're experiencing, you know that everybody is in this because we all have that mental piece. We all have that part of us, if we're living and breathing. So that's what it's about for me. The unique twist to our May conversation, though, on the third Sunday for DMR, is that we tie in about the relationship piece, the dating, the mating, and the relating, and how mental health plays a part in that. Not always good, sometimes bad, but how we can make it through it, and like some things that we can look out for and things that we can encourage our listeners with. So y'all ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Let's do it.
So first things first, let's jump into how it all starts off. And not the good stuff when it's all, we even learn about the chemicals, like what plays a part, the serotonin and the dopamine and how all of that mixes and we're happy and we're in love and we're feeling good. That's all well and good. But what about the red flags? Mental health and red flags, that's like a thing. Especially as couples counselors, I know that we look at the red flags. Like, did you not see this in the beginning? Was this not present for you at all? So, like, what? Let's jump in. Like, what happens? You think about serial daters and red flags. You think about failed relationships and red flags. You think about pop culture and red flags and relationships. What does that say to you? What does it scream to you?
So I when Eddie talks, I really want Eddie to expound at some point on the idea of trauma bonding. I know we kind of talked about that before and just kind of how that's birthed, but I think from a very lay perspective, that when you start to see behaviors, when you start to see people do things, start to have the same type of talk, situations happen and their responses are the same and they're unsettling for you, or they are, the word that we use so often now, they feel toxic for you. Those are the kinds of things that, like, if I'm sitting across from somebody and they're not sure what it means to be connected by a trauma bond, or they're not sure about these counseling therapeutic terms. When you see patterns, when you see behaviors, people do things, say things that repeat themselves, and they are things that, again, they're stressful for you, or they feel toxic for you, or are abusive. Those to me are things that you can identify as being, red flags. Um,
Mm,
so yeah, a behavior, if he or she puts their hands on you, in a volatile, manner,
hmm
that's a red flag. If, in every conversation you two have let's just say you're having a debate, you think differently on a topic, and he or she, starts to use derogatory terms or demeans you, those are that kind of speech and talk that could be, for you, a red flag. So
Yeah.
again, if there whatever these things are that happen that are a place of discomfort, and not just a place of discomfort, but are a negative discomfort, like, see those things as red flags. Like, wait a minute, is this what I want to continue to move forward with?
Right. Okay. So those are the red flags. Eddie, what you got?
So I like to zoom out for a little bit, and go into the term mental health, because a lot of people have this idea that mental health or mental health issues mean schizophrenia, mean bipolar, mean mental health issues are anything that is left over from problems in your upbringing or
Okay.
problems in your current experience, grief, losing somebody. That's mental health. Any of those things can compromise your mind to the degree that it creates issues.
Mm,
So it's a lot of us that need tending to that. And so even going down to like people who are like, when you have a conversation with them, people that who have been invalidated so much in their childhood that they ain't willing to listen or can't listen, or people who when they were growing up just picked up the skill of manipulation, and so every time you talk to them, it's a means to manipulate. you know we like to say, well, that's their personality, or you like to say, well, he's a Cancer, but the reality is you can go to a mental health professional and learn how to communicate appropriately. So it
Right.
might not even be as deep as abuse. It may be every time I try to talk to them, this is going on. That person probably needs to talk to somebody. If you're that person, you need to talk to somebody. And I think the red flags, I think the danger in the red flags is that it's easy when you got a black eye and you look in the mirror and see your black eye. That's a red flag. But
Right.
what
Right.
about just those things that just aren't compatible with who you are as a person when it comes to engaging with that other person? Like that
Mm-hmm.
inability to communicate, like that inconsistency, And I think one thing we do in our relationships in this part of our journey as a people is we connect with people intimately before we connect with them mentally,
Yeah.
and so we end up overlooking those little things that, okay, he don't like having these kind of conversations, that's okay, or he's a little bit inconsistent, that's okay, he's dependable most of the time but not all of the time. Sometimes those are red flags, because if you're a person that needs dependability, then you need to be able to determine that. But sometimes we let sex keep us in a place when we don't need to be. So man, I just I don't. We need to be looking at those little flags, little red
Mm-hmm.
flags,
Mm-hmm.
and then you got to know. First off, though, you got to know what you're looking for, what you're seeking, to be able to
Okay.
identify that.
You know what? And
Okay.
just real quick, well, before you say something, I love something that Eddie brought up about the red flags, and it made me think of this, and that is, I think, um we think of red flags synonymously with something like bad or wrong or negative. But what may be a red flag for me may not be a red flag for Eddie. So when you start to think about red flags, to me, though, these are the things that will not work for you in your relationship, or are something that you see that you're like, we need to try to deal with this. If if he or she
Yeah.
doesn't communicate well, if that's something that you're like, okay, I want to work on that, then yes, you want to deal with that. So again, red flag, but I don't want to see that, because again, he brought up a good point. It doesn't have to be on the spectrum of mental health. It doesn't have to be abuse or schizophrenia, or just kind of that the more severe end of our mental health. It can be something that just is small, but doesn't necessarily need to be overlooked. So the
Mm-hmm.
red flags can be different for everybody, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a thing that it needs some attention.
It's a warning sign. It's a red flag. It's something to, like you said, something to pay attention to, that later on down the line, this was already present. I was just letting you know. I don't know if a yellow flag would make it be a little bit more appealing, because that's a warning, but this is what it is. This is what it is. It's laid out for you to see, so that you can start making some decisions about what needs to happen. So how is that mental health related though? Like, how does that find its way into this conversation about dating, mating, and relating, and mental health? It's a red flag. This is a warning. But I'm thinking about being with somebody, or sharing my life with somebody, or making friends, because this can be about any type of relationship. It could be about um coworker relationships. It can be whatever the relationship is. It's about how you relate. Why are red flags brought up when it comes to mental health?
Well, first off, as far as mental health is concerned, I think that somehow we only associate that when things are not well or something is not good. And I think, mental health is on a spectrum. There's no aspect of your life that you do anything in your mental space is not a piece of it. So whether you make great decisions or poor decisions, whatever you do, anything that you do throughout your day, your conversations, you going to work, you eating, everything is a thought process, whether it's conscious
Mhm.
or not. So, the decisions that you make and how you choose to navigate your relationships, and you deciding, am I going to have a conversation about this? Am I going to be intentional about dealing with this? That
Right.
is your mental space. So, it's weird that we're just now kind of making this whole idea about mental health such a present topic, when I personally don't feel like there's a piece of life that's considered without your mental health being a part of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So that's why it's a thing. So for those of you listening, what we're talking about is just the first stages of mental health and dating, mating, and relating, and how these things go together. You'll be in relationships or be in situations where you're dating or getting to know somebody, and things are happening, and you know that the things aren't quite right, but I care about them. I like them. They make me feel good most of the time, but there's something, there are these things. And that's why we like to have this conversation at this point in time. And then past that, like Eddie mentioned earlier, just the basics, how we come up, lessons that we learned as children, what examples we saw, what our expectations are, what standards look like, what values and morals look like, and how those relate to other people is what dating, mating, and relating is about. So I guess I give you guys some room to kind of wiggle around in here and just go where you want to go, because there are some things that I want to discuss that are a little heavier, but it may not be that heavy for everybody, or you may have been thinking about something else that you wanted to discuss. What is that?
Oh, yeah, that is such a broad question. Eddie, you good. You ready, Eddie. You be good with those kinds of questions. I'm gonna have to process
Where
that
you
one
want to
for a
go,
second.
or what have you been
Well,
thinking
I
about?
was
And I got some stuff.
well, I was going to respond to the previous question just by saying that um if I'm sorry, this outside noise, but if we're going to call mental health anything that can compromise you, I mean, you got the childhood component, but you also got stuff that happened today. It's a 30-year-old that's going to lose somebody that they love today,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to compromise them. When you're not paying attention to what those yellow or red flags are in the relationship, then it's eventually going to turn into stress. It's eventually going to turn into enough stress that it's impacting your relationship, it's impacting your work, it's impacting your friendships, and it's
Right.
eventually going to become a mental situation where your space is compromised, you know? And so that's why it's important to maintain and keep up with those things. Um, but as far as a topic that, I kind of been on for myself, my own personal journey is men and mental health, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but understanding it through the lens of relationships.
Okay.
We got these Kevin Samuels out here. It's a whole bunch of men that's taking in a whole bunch of new information. And I'm like, okay, are y'all really about to go, like, are y'all really seeking to go into engaging with women in a positive way that's gonna bring everybody some peace? Or is this about to be a disaster right now? With people getting into new relationships with all this Derek Jackson and all this
Mhm.
relationship stuff. So like
Yeah.
I'm really just been trying to process like what conversation should I have as a mental health professional with black men regarding how we are going to move forward engaging with black women. That's what I've been on.
And you know what, Eddie? I love that, because even when I think about this whole, this situation with Portia, the Real Housewives of Atlanta
Yes.
lady, and this new relationship that she's in with, and he's supposedly the ex-husband of what was a friend, or people saying a friend. They say they weren't friends, but I think for me the issue becomes, can we still have this conversation from like this holistic view? Like, is it even possible to have a conversation for the masses of women from a woman's perspective about like
Right.
what this should look like, what the narrative should be? Because I feel like that's become the difficulty. Like, everybody thinks that it should look, or maybe, I mean, not everybody thinks that it should look, but if we kind of have this conversation that this is the way that we should approach this is the way it should look. I think, I don't know, I just don't know how helpful that is, but I absolutely agree with, I feel like this conversation is necessary, and we need to be adding something to it. But I'm like, where do we even begin? Because
Mhm.
what relationship looks like and the way that it, should be, and how we should enter it is just, it just seems like it's in so many different directions.
So I think we kind of gave the prelude to it by saying that you enter a relationship by looking for the things that either interest you, or the things that you're dissatisfied with, or the things that are alarming. Like, these are the things that I am interested in. That's when you're looking at somebody else. Okay, so these are the things that I'm interested in from somebody else. These are the things that I cannot take. at all. I would not deal with. I would not accept. These are the things that I know that I need to work on. So like that's the beginning of it. And that honesty, like that honesty and vulnerability, which is all still mental health. Transparency, honesty, vulnerability. How much do you share in the beginning about where you are as a person and what you've experienced? What type of questions do you ask the people that you're getting involved with? So I'll take us there. Both of you made some valid points to get us to this point. Upon building with someone, typically our demographic is made up of multiple ages of adults, different ages of adults, a wide span of people with different issues, brought up in different eras, um, different trials, different tribulations, different lessons, things like that. How do you expect to build a meaningful relationship with someone when you don't know who you are and what you want?
I mean, I think that's the challenge, but that is the one thing that I absolutely enjoy about couples therapy, because I feel like it is oftentimes our connectedness with someone else that brings up that, wait a minute, this may be something that I need to deal with. Because if it's just me, navigating life by myself, I may not be or become as aware that I have some things that could be better. But if Eddie and I are in this committed relationship and I'm moving the way I always moved, and but then because of my connectedness to Eddie and my willingness to trust him and be with him, and he sees something that's like, hold on, like, let's talk about this, I'm probably more willing to deal with that, to address
Yeah.
that, or to work on that. And so I think that that's a piece of it. Like, we don't really realize what our things are until we're in connection with other people that kind of let us know that, wait a minute. So I think that is a part of it, just the idea that you're allowing yourself to be in relationship with someone. But once that happens and that trust is there, or something enough is built there, I think that becomes a way or an avenue to show you that there may be things that you would want to address.
Okay.
Uh,
Eddie?
you know, I do a thought exercise with some of my clients. This ain't couple stuff because it's gonna get dicey if you do this in a couples counseling situation.
Ooh, this make me
But I
fun.
ask,
Take my notes. Go ahead.
I, hey, look, you can use this. Go ahead and take it. I say, if there was a place called Build a Boo instead of Build a Bear, have you really sat down and thought about what kind of person you would create? And have the people in your life met that criteria? And then
And
I
that
go
is so
down,
good.
We're feeling it.
take it. I go down the rung. Okay, we start off with what would they look like? And most people be like, oh, it's a range of this, a range of that, it's okay. Okay, then when you start to get the personality traits and character traits, then I start asking them about their family. Okay, think about people that was close to you in your relationships, the men in your life. What qualities did they have that you would want in a person? What about the women in your life? What qualities did they have that you will want to be catered to that you have? And so we just go down a whole rung of conversation and be like, that's the baseline of your standard. Some people gonna have some of that stuff. Some people not gonna have all of that stuff. But have you really just sat down and done the work of thinking about what kind of person would suit you? And if you can't think about what kind of person will suit you because you're open to a lot of type of people, what qualities do people have that you absolutely know you do not want? And lay out all of those things. And if you start seeing those things show up, then get rid of that. And so the essence of the conversation is, have you really sat down and done the work to think about what you want, think about what you don't want, and think about how it may look to seek those things from a person, and what it may look like to communicate to a person that this is what I need and this is what I don't need. We're good with doing that with trauma, so it's like, if your dad was an alcoholic, it's real easy to say, no, if you drink excessively, we can't be a thing. But what about when it comes to personality, when it comes to character, when it comes to quirks, when it comes to hobbies and things that they like? Have you had that conversation?
Eddie, you know what I love about that? So here's my question to you. Of the times that you've done that exercise, how many people said, well, first of all, he would look like, and they said, well, he would be built by Benjamins. He would be built with just not brown skin, light skin, short, tall, Benjamins.
Eddie was
Nobody,
as in.
Yeah. So I love
nobody
that
say that.
because when I think about, even this, and I hate to keep pointing her out, I just know it's so, so present right now. But, the memes are all as far as this Portia situation is, the dentist is worth, 10 million, and what's the new guy, is worth this whole 30 million. So the idea that, we're looking at people for superficial things or things that can be lost. You can have money and then it can be gone. To think of people in that, in that nature, I think is building on a foundation this week. So I love thinking about that because, I mean, just what you said, because the idea that anybody would start with money, like you said,
And
in your opinion, that has never happened.
Yeah, hold on one second. Let's take a pause for the calls for radio sake and just let people know what you're listening to. You are listening to the Abby Award winning Vital Show on V94.9 WATV. That's where you can find us every Sunday at 7 p.m. having these conversations. And some people were lucky enough to catch it on YouTube before it even hit the airwaves. This is one of those great conversations that we do every third Sunday of every month where we talk about dating, mating, and relating. And today we're doing it from a mental health standpoint, which is kind of where we go every month anyway. My name is Lady Wu. I'm the host of the show, and I have my co host and panelists, the crew, Ready Eddie with me, and counselor Courtney, all licensed professional counselors, two of us who focus with couples and marriage and family and things like that. And that doesn't mean that we don't see other people and deal with other things, but I think that the family is the nucleus of what drives everything. And then Eddie, what's your concentration? Like what do you like to do or what do you focus on in your practice?
I consider myself a generalist. I don't have a specialty. Licensed professional counselor. I really like working with kids and the family. So I
Mhm.
like working with adults that are parents from the perspective of raising kids. Which early in my career started off as a problem because I don't have kids. So
Yeah.
but what I tell people, look, I'm from a profession that was created by people that have kids, and I read books and articles that were created by people that have kids. So my information is solid. Now, I don't
I bet
claim
it
to be a
is.
member. I don't claim to be a member of the exclusive club known as parenting, in which when I see a kid reaching for a plug, it don't hit my heart the way it hit y'all hearts. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a member of that club. I don't take away the exclusivity of what that means, but I have good data, and I have good
Okay.
information,
So
so
let's
I like focusing on kids and families from that perspective.
Gotcha. When you say generalist, that's a good definition. We serve the people with everything that they have when they come. Um
If there's virtue in being having a specialty, but if your specialty is EMDR, that's the only people that's going to come to you. I
mhm.
really like the idea that anybody can walk into my office and I can at least get them to somewhere at some point before they may have to go to a specialist. But that's what is important to me, that anybody that show up, I can tend to them in some kind of way.
Okay. Cool. So for those of you listening, that is the benefit that you get from being able to be a part of our show and to hear what's happening here on Vital. So tonight's conversation, we already kind of had the first half where we introduced the idea and the connection between mental health, mental wellness, mental ill well, we didn't even get into that part, but mental health or mental awareness and relationships, dating, mating, and relating. So in this second half of the first hour, I want to look at something that Eddie said about couples counseling. You ain't married, so how you gonna counsel a couple? Or, you've been divorced. How you gonna couple? How you like? Or you're not in our relationship. How do you know what to? How do you know? Or what you gonna tell us that we don't already know about ourselves? I've heard all of these things when it comes to couples exploring and being a part of couples counseling. Do you all think that it's important for people to, even if they're not getting married, they are serious about each other, they wanna grow? Do you think that couples counseling, couples therapy, is a good idea, and why?
I absolutely think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea because I think you put yourself in a space with somebody that has an outside perspective that is not invested from the inside as the two of you are. And so, my role, my job um, is to potentially bring out blind spots, to help you have conversations that maybe you all have not thought about having, to, I keep going back to Eddie and his perspective and knowledge behind, trauma bonding. But like when you're in the presence of someone that is skilled and knowledgeable and trained to hear things and be able to, relate what that means from a therapeutic standpoint, I think it's eye-opening, and it's something that most people just within their own relationships don't do within their home. I mean, even being a
Right.
therapist, it's helpful for me in my relationship to have someone on with an outside perspective be able to speak into that, because there are just things that sometimes you're just not aware of, when
Right.
you're on the inside of it. So allowing somebody that, like, again, just kind of has an outside unbiased perspective be able to shed some light from a professional stance is, I think that's absolutely helpful. I think it's essential to the longevity of a relationship. And one quick point, the idea behind you having to be married or have to have kids to counsel kids, if that is what you're
Right.
looking for as a client, for you it matters to have someone that shares the experience. Great, if that's what you want. But you cannot, but don't minimize the idea that somebody that doesn't have that same experience cannot help you. I mean, I can't think about how
Exactly.
many, cardiologists out there that don't have heart issues. How many, pediatric, cancer surgeons out there whose children don't have cancer. So,
Hmm.
but that doesn't deny the idea that they can't help you, and I feel like we are that one profession that is like, if your experience doesn't fit mine, I don't know how you can help me. But we'll go into a
Right.
medical profession all day and let, medical doctors do their part, and they don't share the same experiences. So we're knowledgeable, we're skilled, and we build on those skills and we get the education so that we can walk alongside of you regardless of whether or not our experiences are shared.
Okay. Eddie, why is it that when couples do go to counseling or therapy, typically it's the women who establish it? Women say, "Hey, we need to go talk to somebody," or you proposed to me. Now I think we should schedule to go get some counseling. Why is it always the women who initiate that? It might be one man listening that's like, I said it, but overall we know what it is.
You're muted, Eddie.
He also having the same issue that women have when they propose counseling in their relationship. So he'll understand, you know. But the reason is because our society has nurtured women to be emotional, aware of their emotions, but more than anything, I think the separation of men and child rearing versus the expectation that it's women's role is that we
Uh-huh.
also expect women to take care of issues when they show up the same way that they're expected to take care of issues when with kids. So I think not sharing the responsibility in those roles has like made us feel like it's a woman's responsibility to take on that responsibility. And I think women have adopted that role of taking on that responsibility. So they end up being the ones that one see the problem, that
Yeah.
treat the problem, and that tend to the problem and that maintain the problem. And that and suggesting counseling is a part of that. And I think that, I
Exactly.
mean, that's just like our societal conditioning. Why it's so easy for men to walk away from children because they
Right.
can, and why is women don't have a choice. They have to tend to this thing at hand. And I think it looks like that with problems on top of not being able to communicate emotions, which in the context of our society, we just think counseling is talking about your feelings,
Hmm.
which in essence it is, but to answer the previous question, you need to go because in my counseling, it's been more important to me to find words to help a person understand what I'm trying to achieve that challenges their preconceived notions of what it is. So with couples, I say, hey, there is an objective way that a relationship is healthy, and there is an objective way that a relationship is unhealthy. Whether y'all decide to go to Walmart or Target as a couple, that's arbitrary. That don't make a difference. But there are things we can point to directly, and us as therapists, we've done the work, we've read the books, we've read the knowledge, we've gone through the coursework, we have the understanding of what is healthy and what is unhealthy. What most people
Right.
have is what I seen my parents do and what I seen my
Hmm.
grandparents do, and hot takes I seen on social media. But do you really have an understanding of what healthy looks like versus what unhealthy looks like? And
Okay.
so coming to counseling is, it is a couple together, But I don't want people to discount how much you learn as an individual
Mm-hmm.
about yourself in the context of being in a room with somebody else. I really think that you learn more about yourself through the lens of two people being in a room and one learning about themselves and the other learning about themselves, and the counselor finding that balance. You know, I
Right.
think you learn more in couples counseling than you do as an individual. So anybody that's seeking to be a relationship, unless you like Maya in a relationship with yourself, which I guess that's some different kind of counseling. If you're not doing that, then you should definitely go find you a therapist, somebody that you like, because it's when it's critical in your relationship and your relationship is tanking, you really want to have somebody that you like, that you trust, that you built that relationship with,
Mm-hmm.
on more general terms than on more serious terms.
Right. Hmm. So I'm thinking about, like, I'm taking in what both of you have contributed to that part of the conversation, just looking at the fact that we all want somebody at some point for something. You know, there are people like Maya who have decided that, hey, I love myself the best. I've been in situations where I found out that I'm not good in relationship, or other people aren't good in relationship, and I have expectations from relationship, and I'm those things aren't being met for me. So I've made the decision to date myself. Does self love ever become, is there ever a thing is too much self love, or does it ever become just ridiculous that people, I guess, are traumatized in relationship the way that they are, to the point where they may even marry themselves, have their own service, their own ceremony? Is that extreme?
Listen, I, you, I encourage all the self love. I think that's great. I think it's necessary. Um, However, I don't believe that we were created to be creatures by ourselves and do life by ourselves. Like everything in life, everything in the world has there's some type of relationship, some type of mutual benefit. And so to think that you can navigate life by yourself, whether for you, it's a marriage or not, like you cannot do life alone.
Yeah.
So Maya has some type of relationship, whether it maybe it's not intimate. She got a friend. She maybe has people that work for her. It's some kind of relationship that she has in her life. You cannot exist without them. Whether it's your doctor,
What?
whether there's not, no one can show me a piece of their life where they don't have some type of relationship.
But I've
So,
ended intimate relationships. I don't want anybody in that space for me, because it's difficult. I've been hurt. I've been rejected. None of them have worked, and I've just decided that it's easier for me to do this by myself.
but
What
you're
does
not
that
doing it by
equate?
yourself. Unless she is
Okay.
sitting in her home and not ever leaving, then maybe I'm convinced that she's doing life by herself. So she may have convinced herself that, you know what, just my girlfriends, that's enough for me. But the idea
Mhm.
that you can do life without some kind of companionship, without some type of, like I said, some type of relationship is, I, I think that's a bold faced lie. I don't think that as of right now, there's no one out there that can prove to me that they're doing life without some kind of relationship. And so again, because of your trauma, you may not engage in something that is intimate or something that is what most of us identify as being a couple relationship, or someone that you're going to marry. But maybe again, through your trauma, your way of working through that has been to convince myself that I don't need a lifelong partner. But
Yeah.
you got a friend, you got a girlfriend that you pick up the phone and you talk to, you laugh with, you maybe go on a trip with, you maybe go out to eat with. You are gaining some type of companionship from some space in your world.
Okay. So companionship is not always intimate. It's not that's not what companionship means. It's basically what I'm kind of hearing from you. Like, there's a level of intimacy that you share with people that's not sexual. And in order for people to understand that, then self love and everything else makes more sense. So, Eddie, when you hear this, like, self love is like such a thing now that people totally like, I don't need nobody else. I love myself. I don't care what other people. It's all about self love. What are your thoughts about self love?
I'm not inclined to believe that Maya is in a bubble. I guess she could be, but in the world of non-monogamy, there's there's polyamory, which is becoming. And if you watch Red Table Talk, is they putting it out there. But there is a component called solo poly, where the
Mhm.
way that's defined is that you're in a relationship with yourself and anybody else you engage with as your secondary partners. So to me, I really think it's an exercise in boundaries, to where it's like I'm putting myself first before I put everybody else. And that may look like a regular relationship from the outside looking in, but I think the essence of self-love for me is imposing boundaries on yourself and and on your life and how you want to interact and engage with the people around you.
Mhm.
And it don't matter it don't matter what kind of relationship you're in. It don't matter if we're talking about family or friends or romantic. You need boundaries.
Yeah.
You need something to tell people how far you are. Like the movie ticket line, when you're standing in the line, them little things that's standing up where you can't go outside of them. I mean, clearly if you pick one up and throw it out the way, you can. But it's
Mhm.
only so far them elastic things can go before it start pulling you back to where you need to be. And we need to have those for ourselves. I mean, we can stretch them a little bit, but you got to have them in place. It's a lot of people that don't have them in place. They got 3 little ticket booths with no boundaries, no gates or nothing, and it's people about to fight because they didn't know what line they was in. Like, that's the internal conflict that you end up having when you don't have boundaries set for yourself. Means that you stop living for yourself and you start living for other people. And
Hmm.
in 10 years, you're gonna look in the mirror and be like, who am I? What do I
Yeah.
really want?
What have I done?
Where are my
Right.
limits? Yeah, exactly.
And I like that. I love the idea of that. I believe boundaries are essential, but like, call a thing. You know what I mean? If it's because you've been in relationships that have harmed you so much that you realize now how important it is to make yourself the priority, and that there are things about your world that you're not going to let people overstep, you know, then okay, let it be that. And I don't know the depths of the Maya thing. I just, use her name because
Yeah,
you
me
all, we
too.
put that
It's,
out
I
there.
don't know.
But this idea though that it's like just all me and I don't need anybody. BS. So if you've set boundaries, great. I want you to do that. But don't,
I agree with that.
yeah, like, let's not, like I said, call a thing, title it what it is.
There's a
I agree
need
with
for
that, and
people
that's
to
a
believe
trauma
that.
response.
Okay, that part. There's a need for that. There's a need for knowing to put yourself first. There's a need for knowing to put boundaries in place. There's a need for understanding how far to go with the boundaries that you put in place. Eddie, your statement at the end of what we were just saying, or right there at the beginning of it, that's a trauma response. Trauma is what? What is trauma defined as?
Trauma is trauma is your psychological reaction to an experience that you had that was negative. And the residual effects of that is trauma. Basically, how you respond to the world now because of that thing that happened, that's trauma.
Hmm. That was
And,
traumatic
again,
for me.
yeah. I mean,
Understand that
that
statement. That was traumatic for me. That did something to me. That really bothered me. So when people say that, what's traumatic is it that trauma is like overall the same level of trauma for other people, for everybody, or is it I broke my nail, that was traumatic, and then for somebody else I lost my child, that was traumatic? Like, is it on a spectrum as well, or is everything that's negative traumatic?
oh, it's absolutely on the spectrum because somebody can lose their nail, and somebody could have lost their nail by their whole fingernail being ripped off at some point, and now they
Mhm.
don't open soda cans no more. You know what I'm saying? Because
Mhm.
I'm not doing that to my finger again. Like, that can be trauma. And I think,
That was
and for
traumatic.
me, I mean, unfortunately, I grew up in a poverty-stricken environment where my home had roaches.
Yeah.
It's people that's terrified of roaches, and I mean, roaches just exist. You know what I'm saying? For me, so somebody can have trauma about something that I don't have trauma about. It's a scale of
Mhm.
what that is. The trauma is based on the perception of the individual experiencing that thing. There is no universal, we
Mhm.
all experience this thing in the same way. It's based on our mental fortitude. It's based on our tenacity. Based on our upbringing, our environment. It's based on our temperament. It's based on a bunch of different factors that, when you experience this thing, maybe you can't recover from it, but maybe somebody else can.
Mhm.
You
How does
know,
that look in
it's
relationship? Like, if I've experienced something, my partner may not have been there, or doesn't understand why it affects me the way it affects me. So now, because of this trauma that I've experienced, my partner triggers it, or I'm triggered by something, and this is where we are.
Well, like first off, do you know what triggers you? Like, have you done to work to know where your triggers are, where your issues are, and where that person could trigger you? Because
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, they just a walking jack in the box. Just turn it a little crank, and you don't even know when it's gonna pop out. Or if your trauma is parental death related, and you watching movies and a parent die, and you don't know that you respond to it in this way, and your partner got to pick up pieces for 3 days, but they don't know what's going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to communicate and let your partner know what's going on with you. But the essence of doing that is not only discovering what that is for you, but doing the work to become comfortable enough with talking about it with somebody who ain't you.
Mm-hmm.
You
Right.
know, because
Okay.
I tell people all the time, look, you got to have these conversations with yourself in the mirror first, like an actual physical conversation.
Let me
This
get into
stuff
the
being in
mirror.
your head, yeah, this
Mm-hmm.
stuff being in your head is one thing. When you speak it, it becomes real, and you got to deal with it because it's come out now, come out of you.
And to me, I think that that's the benefit in allowing yourself to connect with others, even if it's not on the most intense level. But I think that sometimes just allowing ourselves to be in relationship with other people will force us or influence us to deal with that stuff. So, for a long time, I can know that, parental deaths, trigger something in me. But if I'm just doing life by myself, then I may not ever deal with it. But if I'm gonna sit down and watch a movie with my homegirl or my homeboy, or somebody that I am more romantically involved with, and I'm triggered and I shut down, then it kind of forces that conversation. Like, hey, we watched whatever we watched, and past couple of days you've been in a mood. Like, what's good? And so I think that allows us, to kind of forces us to deal with some of our stuff. So, allowing yourself to be involved and be connected sometimes can help you deal with the stuff that is there, but you're just not or choosing not to intentionally do the work.
How much is too much to tell? And this is before we go to our second hour. I have a diagnosis, or I've had some very traumatic things to occur in my life, and I'm serious about you. I want us to be together, but I need to lay this stuff out because it affects me mentally. And I know that if I'm involved with somebody, or this is what I do when this happens in my life, either I shut down, normally I take a drive and I may go away for 2 or 3 days. What are some other things people do? I may not answer my phone. These are things that happen because of some things that I've experienced. And I want you to know, but I don't know when to tell you. And what do I do with that? So is somebody listening in that position like, oh, I got some real stuff I need to tell, but I don't know when.
So I think this is kind of two parts. I think it goes back to our first segment, which was where we talked about the red flags. These are the things that, okay, this started happening and I have an issue. So am I going to
Yeah.
have a conversation about it? So if I'm in a relationship with you and I have a conversation about, hey, I called you for 2 days and you didn't answer. To me, the door is open for you to have an honest conversation with me.
Mhm.
So, if you don't, I don't know how I'm left here to manage this, and you're not giving me any information to help me manage it. So that's a piece of it. The other thing is, if you are on the other side of this, your truth is your truth, right? And if you're
Right.
uncomfortable with that, that to me says that there is work to be done there. Because yeah, sure enough, we all have something that's maybe embarrassing or shameful, or we feel some guilt about, or yeah, maybe I'm afraid that my partner will distance themselves because this is too much. But they have
Mm.
that liberty. When you give people information, you owe them that so that they can make the decisions that they want to make. And that to me is not necessarily, we don't need to internalize that we're just owed too much. No, I mean, maybe it's more for that person to manage and deal with. And they had, like, we owe them that, because at some point these things will surface and you're going to think that you have something and you're building on something, and you're going to get to a place where you realize that, no, this is not what I can deal with. And had I been given the information when I opened the door, for you to communicate a certain thing, and you didn't, now here we are. So one,
Wow.
you don't be afraid of your truth. If you are, you need to start having a conversation about that. And two, as a partner, when you see that thing happening that's questionable, Open the door, ask the questions.
Okay. Let's take a quick break. I really appreciate that. Open the door, ask the questions, be open about your truth because it's your truth. Those are things that if you're listening, you should definitely keep in mind. We're just kind of giving you the keys to be able to tend to the mental health aspects of your relationship. And when I tell you, when I say that, that is a wide open statement because that's every aspect of your relationship, from the way you all talk to each other, to the side eyes that you may give, to the exes and how that affects you, to your children, to the sex that you have or don't have. This is what mental health looks like in relationships. So you're listening and watching Vital on B94.9 WATV. I'm Lady Wu. Ready Eddie is here. Ready Eddie is a licensed counselor as well, and also Courtney Shields, who's a licensed counselor. And we are having a conversation just to open the door to mental health in dating, mating, and relating. Coming up in the second hour, y'all, I want to go to the relationships themselves and some of the disorders and issues that you may see due to mental health. All right, y'all get ready. Get
Woo,
ready.
child.
All right. So here we are. For those of you who may view us, we're going straight into our second hour here. So you are watching and listening to the Abby Award winning Vital Show. I am Lady Wu, licensed professional counselor, and of course, radio personality because that's where you hear me, that's where you see me, and the creator of the Vital Show. Got my people with me. And we have been chopping it up like on a deeper level about relationships. I'm quite sure you and your partners don't have conversations about love, lust, and lies like this. This is like on a whole nother level of conversation about love and dealing and doing and growing with people. So let's look at mental wellness. I'll start there. I want to talk about the good stuff first. Let's give it some shine. Mental wellness in a relationship looks like what?
I just believe that that's your ability to be able to have conversation about your world. To me, it doesn't mean that I'm not necessarily depressed, or that I don't deal with anxiety, or that I'm going through some grief or some kind of traumatic event. It just means that I am cognizant of where I'm at, where I am, and I'm willing to be able to have conversation about it if necessary. And I'm able to still kind of to do life and be able to compartmentalize what's my stuff versus what's somebody else's stuff.
Okay. All right. So that's good. Like that's your basic answer. Eddie, what about you?
You're
You're
muted.
muted.
For me, mental health is your ability to bounce back. It's basically your ability to regulate your emotion enough to function properly.
So
You know, no,
mental wellness in relationship, is that would you say that that's the same thing?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you're in a relationship in which you have hard conversations, if you're in a relationship in which you're both recovering from trauma, I mean, you still got to function day to day, regardless of your past stuff and regardless of what's going on with you individually. So
Mhm.
your ability for something bad to happen and for you to come back and still be able to regulate at the end of the day, those are the skills that I want my clients to leave counseling with, because bad stuff is not going to stop happening. Bad days are not going to stop happening, but how much you wallow in them, how much they impact your day and your other relationships, all of those things, they can be managed to the point where you can come back to where you need to be in order to function. And I think that people come to counseling because all of the stuff that's been going on in their life, they're seeing that today they can't function.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Wow.
when you leave me, I just want you to be able to get right quick. You know,
Hmm.
that's
Get right
that's
quick.
mental wellness for me. Yeah,
Okay.
get
So
right
we
quick
we could
and
we
then
can bounce
process.
back because we have that foundation laid. We've had conversations. We're tending to our mental health. We're talking to someone. If medication is a thing, we're taking our medication. If meditation is a thing, we're meditating. If seeing our therapist is a thing, whatever it is that we need to do to take care of ourselves as individuals, we're doing those things. And then as a couple, we're tending to our relationship in a way that is good. So therefore, we can have a disagreement or an argument and we don't have to end up throwing pots and pans and packing up and moving out. Like people disagree, and we have skills and tools to help us function through that. Mental wellness may also look like how we function within each other's individual lives and circles and families. Like, this is wellness. We had a time where it wasn't good, but we were able to process what that should look like for us. And so now we're good in that area. So we find the good spots. We find the butterflies and ladybugs. We find that stuff. But then you also, there's, to every good thing there's the opposite. So there's some bad things or some things that may cause some issues in relationships. And I'm gonna be honest with y'all, what I found more than anything, more than money, they say finances, oh, that's the top reason for divorce. More than lack of sex, more than so many things, it's mental health. There are issues that aren't tended to, that, show themselves in different ways in relationships. And people have to deal with that stuff. And when they don't, oh boy, these are tumultuous, heartbreaking, gut wrenching relationships that people try to hold on to, but the mental health hasn't been taken care of.
And sometimes you find that I think that there are people out there that may struggle with disorders that are one, difficult for them to even
Acknowledge.
huh
Difficult for them to acknowledge that this is a thing,
yes,
it's a problem.
yes.
Okay. Okay.
And so if you have that, then it's hard to move through that, because if I'm in the world of 12 steps, the first thing to do is acknowledge that you have an issue. um
Yeah.
so if you don't do that, it's hard to do the additional work. And I'll tell you, being in relationship with people that struggle with personality disorders is probably one of the most challenging, I think, relationships to be invested in.
Wow.
um and listen, of all things out there, of depression and grief and trauma, and there are a lot of things that I think add things to relationships that make it a little bit harder. But in my experience, I have not seen things that are harder than somebody that doesn't want to acknowledge that they have a look been touched by narcissism, or been touched by some kind of borderline personality. So
So let's get into that, Courtney, because we can. Because I think we're equipped to be able to talk about what some of the things are that people can look for. Because it's somebody that is listening, that is either experiencing that, or they've grown to understand that it's something going on here that I can't quite put my finger on, but I can't do this relationship anymore. And it becomes a thing for everybody around it. So let's start with the narcissistic personality disorder, because that's what everybody loves to say. "Ah, he a narcissist. She a narcissist." Some folks don't even know how to say the word. They don't even
right.
know that it's narcissistic or a. I'm like, where did y'all learn this? Where did you get this from? Can we please educate the listeners on what some of the traits are for narcissistic personality disorder?
Yeah, so with narcissism, these are people that the idea of like grandiosity and admiration for self, with the lack of empathy. Everything is about them. Other things are there's little to blame self for. There's little to no ability to be accountable. I'm superior in a sense. That is kind of the world of narcissism. And I think the big piece also to see with that, because there are people that are what we could just deem as like arrogant or self-centered, but
Yeah.
may have the ability to be empathetic, and may be able to at some point recognize that, oh, okay, I had a little fault there. So arrogance and some self-centeredness is very different than that of a narcissistic is that of a narcissistic person. So yeah, that just idea of grandiosity, the need for other people to just see them in that light as well. Like, you need to admire me. And then also coupled with that inability to be able to be empathic.
What are some of the underlying things with that, Courtney? Like, I hear everything you're saying about, it's a grandiose me, 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 but like, what under all of that, what's the thing? Like, what
Yeah,
is the
like nothing
thing?
in the relationship is my fault. We're having conversations, and you know, you try to present, okay, we something happened, right? And I'm trying to have a conversation with you about, my stance on it, and what I thought, what I felt, and you nothing about that person on the other end is able to see that. It's always, taking switching things back on you, and how it's, your fault. So in the idea of a relationship, I think just the inability to accept accountability for anything. And just the idea of probably somebody that's going to be controlling,
Okay.
lack the ability to be able to listen, because they don't have a lot of empathy. If an unempathetic person, what's the need in listening to you? I'm not going to be able to relate, or do I even want to try to? So, and they may hear you. You may be talking, but they're just waiting on their chance to be able to tell you why things are, your fault.
Okay. Interesting. So that's narcissistic personality disorder. Eddie, there's another one that everybody is, well, I'm so this one hasn't caught on as much as the other, but borderline personality disorder, and looking at that in relationship. Like, first of all, if I'm hearing borderline, that makes me think, like, if I'm non-educated and I'm just hearing the names of these different things, that I'm on the edge. I'm always on the edge, and something's probably about to happen. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, for the most part, um, that's right. I think that's a easy layman's term to look at it. I think borderline personality order is basically developed by a person being invalidated so much through their childhood that they don't really know how to make decisions, and so they try to manipulate their environment by being dishonest, and they are uncertain about a lot of things, and that creates a lot of anxiety and frustration. And um and the way that looks in a relationship is somebody that's very inconsistent, very independable, and somebody who who creates this narrative for themselves that might not look right to you. It might not look like reality. It might not make sense. Like when you start meeting their family and friends and getting
Yeah.
different sides of stories and stuff, you might find out that I don't know what's really happening right now, because when you believe a person when you with them, and you start, so borderline is another thing about borderline is primarily diagnosed to women.
Hmm. Really?
So that gets to the sexism in the situation.
It does. And if I can add something to that, Eddie, I think that it is that way because we see a lot of borderline with emotional dysregulation, right? The inability to be able to regulate the mood. And as for women, we are sought to be emotional beings, that we're gonna, talk about our feelings. We're gonna talk about what we, just is. I feel this and I feel that. And so
Mhm.
when that is inconsistent, or when that's impulsive, or when it's, I love you, and then as soon as you're engulfed in the love, then I'm finding some way to, create some kind of argument. Well, but I feel this way because you ain't come home last, or you ain't called me. So it's that tug of war. And women, we're more apt to speak on emotionally what we
Right.
think we're
Anyway.
feeling anyway. Yeah,
Right.
and so and because borderline is very, I think it's very difficult diagnosis. Once, as from a therapeutic stance, um, once you're in the presence of someone that to be borderline, it's a lot easier to pick up. I think in the lay world, though, people, oh, they borderline, and we, just because somebody's difficult doesn't, it's not synonymous with
Right.
borderline.
Right. Right.
But just to go to Eddie saying that, I think that that's a piece of that, because so much of that is it's instability with interpersonal relationship, and so we're more vocal about emotionally kind of where we are and what we're thinking and feeling, and so I think over time that may be why it seems more of a woman's diagnosis
Mm.
um, than not.
I hope that you all are listening and really just taking in what we're sharing tonight, and just the conversation that we're having, and making it personal for you. Like, make it be what you need it to be. Think about the situations that you've been in. Think about you in the relationships and situations that you've been in, and just, wow, well, that brings up something for me. And I may need to reach out to somebody, or it may not be about you that it brings up. I saw a meme not too long ago where it says that most people are in therapy because of people who won't go to therapy. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty accurate. So if they want to go, what's your contact information? I highlight you and bring it to the screen so you can tell them.
Hey, it's me. So my telephone number is 205-201-1012. And I am the owner of Purpose Hope Counseling Services. Again, that's 205-201-1012. And I will share that, I am I say transitioning, but my specialty focus are couples, are marriages, premarital counseling. Um, so I have seen and will see a lot of things, but that is the work that I do a lot of and enjoy most.
Okay. And what's your number again?
205-201-1012.
All right. So then, ready, Eddie.
Yes. I'm the co-founder of Restoring Hopes. You can find me at 706-590-2630. If you want counseling with me. Now, it will be telehealth exclusively at this point because I'm in Hawaii right now. But if you have a child that you want services with, if you want some parenting input, that's my specialty. But any adults, especially black men that are looking for a black male therapist, here we are. Here I am.
All right. So that's restoring hopes right there on the screen for Eddie. And then you got Counselor Courtney right here with her information. So you can get that. And then you'll see it throughout the show. And then Lady Wu, here I am right here. And Vital Life Family Counseling is what I do. I love to deal with urban issues. Like I really like urban issues. And when I say urban issues, I mean inner city blues. Okay. I mean Marvin Gaye, what's going on type stuff, rap, hip hop. So like I really feel that in order for us to understand where we are and who we are, we have to dig. And so unpacking is a lot of what I do. That's actually like what my practice says. Like let's unpack, let's go through this stuff and see what it really is. Let's fold it up nice and neat, roll it up, repack it so that we can carry it. It won't be as heavy and we know what it is and what to do with it. So that's my information at the bottom of the screen. So we talked about borderline personality disorder in relationship. We talked about narcissistic personality disorder in relationship. Um, there are other ones that most people aren't privy to. They don't really know about the other ones. Histrionic personality disorder. What's some other ones?
Sure, you got paranoid, you got antisocial, you have
Mm.
uh come on, Eddie, I'm drawing a complete blank.
Schizoid.
Avoidant personality disorder, you
Mhm.
got dependent personality disorder. So if somebody real clingy and you can't get rid of them and they
Like, what is this?
yeah. You've got obsessive compulsive personality disorder.
Mhm. That's OCD,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
Mm-hmm.
in a personality type though, not just the things that you may do, not just that hey, I have OCD. No, this is like an actual disorder to your personality. Like it interrupts your daily functioning,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay. So when you think about those situations in relationship undiagnosed, like people are living and going about life the way that they always have, and nothing is working. No relationships are working. They can't keep jobs. Friends are kind of near and far. They, here a minute, then after so long, you don't have friends again. And you are really crushed by that. What when you hear personality disorder, can't that be offensive? Don't you think? Like as therapists, even what we call things and how like the stigma that's attached to mental health in relationship. Like, what do I look like saying, you know what, Eddie? I think you're really handsome. I'm really, interested in you, but I have narcissistic personality disorder. What?
Yeah, it's. I mean, it absolutely feels threatening because the one thing that makes up who I am, it almost feels like that's flawed, or that there's something wrong with it. And I think that there's always a way to word things so that we make it or we can help it feel less threatening. And not necessarily judgmental. So, my only issue is when you, because I don't expect, my expectation for the layperson is not that, they see things and say, oh, I'm narcissistic. But I do think that you pick up on patterns, and you have these certain circumstances, like you said, you just mentioned, like you can't keep a job. It's been 15 years and you've never kept, like, those are things that we need to start to deal with. And so then I'm going to take issue though with you allowing yourself to experience the same concerns over and over in an unwillingness to deal with it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not that your personality is necessarily flawed. However, there are things about your personality that are, preventing you from being in meaningful relationships. They're, prohibiting you from, keeping a job. They are threatening to the people that you love. They are, concerning for even your own safety. When those things are issues, then let's deal with it. But when you choose not to, then to me, yeah, then that's the moment that, yeah, well, I'm not sure that I care that you internalize it as I got something wrong with me. I mean, but again, I don't know that I wouldn't see personality as a thing to judge as much as, hey, here are the here are
This
the
is what
things
makes
about
you
your
special.
personality that we might want, if we can strengthen or make better or show you how to work within relationships, knowing you experience this thing, then let's do that.
Right. Okay. I can take that. I hear that. Um, Eddie, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, earlier I was going to say, you mentioned if a person knows that they are, get in a mood and they're not going to call back or not going to respond to calls or text back, if you can verbalize that you have this problem, you need to be verbalizing it to a therapist so that it's
Mm,
not a problem in your relationship. It shouldn't
okay.
be something that you become so complacent with that you rather communicate it to a person that and want them to accept it rather than know that it's a problem and not be trying to do something about it to resolve it.
That's good.
And I think it's the same way in this context.
Hmm.
It's, if you know you're a narcissist, the way you should communicate it with somebody is that I'm in therapy working on this thing that I've been experiencing since I was younger, and I'm doing work to overcome it, and invite them in through that lens. You don't invite them in through the lens of hoping that they accept it about you without doing work to recover from it, or to, get, do some work on it.
Hmm.
Because I think the difficult balance is, for me, I think you need to have the information up front, because this person might have been in a traumatic relationship with a narcissist before. And so not knowing that you're a narcissist may be a real quick way out of the relationship when they start seeing signs of it, when you're not being transparent with it, you know?
But
And so
what narcissist owns being a narcissist?
we might be using the wrong one for narcissism. Most other diagnoses, the narcissist clearly don't believe it is anything wrong with them,
Right.
What are you
but
talking about?
all the other diagnoses that a doctor tell you you're this thing and you have a diagnosis for it, it's what Courtney said. It's a way of trying to figure out how to communicate that to a person, because it's inevitable that they're going to eventually see the signs of that thing,
Hmm.
and I mean, personality disorders ain't really something you heal from for good. It's not like
Hmm.
I used to have narcissistic personality. I used to have borderline. Remember, the foundation of this is how your brain was crafted and developed through what you experienced in your childhood and
Hmm.
some brain chemistry. So it's not like these things are gonna go away. So they're eventually gonna see the signs, and you would rather you be able to control the narrative of what them signs look like, rather than them seeing the signs and thinking whatever they think, and then having that narrative themselves and not fooling with you no more because you didn't take the effort to control that narrative and tell your story rather than let somebody figure that story out for you.
I just thought about something. We were talking about how Maya and a couple of other people have done this as well. Either they married themselves or they altered their liking. They say, you know what? I'm gonna try something different. Well, I've been feeling another way about my sexuality. I'm gonna do something different. Um, when I hear things like personality disorder, the way I deal with my anger, which may not be a part of a disorder, I may just have anger issues. And you all know, like from studying the DSM, from writing treatment plans, people would come in with things that are issues for them. Erectile dysfunction is even in the DSM. Delayed ejaculation is in the DSM, right? So like all of these things are there, and they're all connected to mental health. But it still makes me think about the difficulty in being in a relationship or being in relation with other people, and you have these things going on and you can't address them. Or either you've addressed your things, but most of the people that you encounter have addressed nothing. So therefore it puts you in these positions to continue to have to rebuild and revisit things. Can't you all understand why people make other decisions about how they date, mate, and relate? Like after hearing a show like this?
Oh, absolutely. I don't knock that, because to me, a lot of times in therapy, you'll hear, well, I've tried this and I've tried that, nothing's working. And, I'm always like, kudos to you for trying, for not giving up on, trying to improve your situation, trying to, put yourself in a place where you are better and you are more fulfilled. So, but and while people try to figure it out, whether I agree or disagree with their route of trying to figure it out, I don't really think is my place. Just, I just think the idea that people are trying to, figure something out. Let me try this because, I've done this 15 times and it has not worked.
Mm-hmm.
But with that as well, it's like, okay, you've done it 15 times. Of those 15 times, what about it has not worked? And that's the place where, I think sometimes can become a challenge, is for people to accept where their role is
And
in
their
any,
stuff.
transgression, or what they feel like is a
Right.
failed relationship. Because yeah, there are definitely people out there, kind of like what Eddie was saying, if you've got a narcissist, if you have narcissism, or you've got a borderline personality, maybe if you haven't shared that thing with me, so I haven't been given the space to deal with it. So I do think that there are, those circumstances where you really have been in a relationship with people that it feels like you weren't left any other option to leave it. But if also you need to be keeping up with, okay, of the things that have not gone well, what is my role, what's my part in it, so that we can try to deal with that, opposed to you just being like, oh well, let me go out and just try to date this person or that person, this person, trying to figure it out, when maybe the answer is kind of within your own resolve, or within you dealing with some stuff within yourself first. So go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's a good point for us to take another radio break. People are watching and listening and tuning in at this point, and we are covering some deep stuff. And I really think this is one of those shows, like once you start listening and you hear something that triggers you or that stands out to you, you keep listening. So I want us to give our contact information again. I want us to dive into a few other things. We have another half, one more half of the show tonight to share with you for Mental May, Mental Health Awareness Month, and on the third Sunday, dating, mating, and relating from a mental standpoint, like really looking at everything that makes us us and teaches us how to date, what to think, if we're married, how to move around in our marriages, how our relationships impact our children. Um, successful relationships, why do they work? Unsuccessful relationships, why don't they work? That's what we're talking about tonight. So just a quick pause for the calls, and we shall return right now with the final segment of tonight's show right here on B94.9 WATV, where the V stands for variety, but on Sunday nights it stands for vital. And I am joined by our core crew members who are also licensed professional counselors, Eddie Sharp and Courtney Shields. And of course, I'm Lady Wu, also a licensed professional counselor. I always have to add that when we have this conversation. So, like, I ask the questions from um, a very novice standpoint. So as if I didn't know anything about mental health, because I want to make sure that we're answering questions and talking about things that you all need to hear and things that you want to hear. So, Courtney, what have you thought about as far as somewhere that we need to go, or something that's interesting, or something that we should address? What are you thinking?
Who? So you just mentioned something about marriage, and I really think this could be from a marriage or a couple's perspective, but I think having the conversation around what makes your relationship work. I think so many of us have this idea of what well, what so-and-so's relationships look like, and even the healthy ones. Even when I, like when I think about your parents, to me, that is a very strong foundation of a relationship, or of a marriage. But the thought that, well, that's what my relationship should look like, may not be. You're talking about two individuals that could be completely different than Mr. and Mrs. Woodruff. So the idea that our relationship will look like that uh, may not be accurate. So if we're chasing something that we don't, if we're chasing something that's on a foundation of somebody else's stuff, I think that we run ourselves in circles. And so, two people coming together to understand what will the identity of their relationship be, I think is a lost topic.
Okay. So with you went somewhere that I've had to deal with personally as far as relationship and expectation. Even if I don't say what the expectations are for a relationship, my intentions are always to have something as golden as what I saw my parents have. Just period. Like that's what I saw. And I know when we first started the conversation, we talked about how things are formed. They're formed from what you learn and what you see growing up. So my idea of marriage and dating, mating, and relating came from a very solid situation. It came from my grandparents being married and having a very solid situation, being like your TV style grandparents on one side. On the other side, my grandparents married and divorced twice. But still, I saw relationships that people wanted to work. They wanted to make their relationships work. So I don't know what the difference is with us and our generation or what we think or how we look at relationships, but that hasn't like what I saw them do is not what I've been able to do with the people that I've met. Why? Because we ain't them. I'm not even like my parents to that point for me to be thinking that, but that's what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
Once I understood that I had to have my own relationship with whoever I was involved in, then I was able to kind of dismiss the thought of having
Back to
this,
your mic.
oh, it's so ideal relationship that my parents have. I had to learn that though. Like I had to unlearn what was so good to be able to accept you might not that might not be it for you.
Yeah,
Ooh.
and so I think it go like, so the idea of solid, um to me, is a positive quality. I mean, I we do want something solid. But so then what does solid look like for us in 2021? I mean, I think that as the times progress, and I do believe there are traditions that we can try to hold on to, but I also think, and this is kind of shifting a little bit, but I feel like just when you start thinking about the idea um, of racism and just kind of the political climate, and even things that are happening from a countrywide standpoint, we are having a reckoning with tradition not being what necessarily works.
Exactly.
The way that things used to be, I think that we're now getting this voice to say, hey, like the systemic like this can't be that anymore. That no longer works for the generation, the times that we're in. And so, the idea again behind solid, yes, absolutely, I think a fruitful thought. But what does that look like now? And I think that we see things, and we've been through things. And I know this one thing that Eddie always brings up, and it's just the idea of people's experiences, definitely kind of build who they are and their expectations and their thoughts and their beliefs. And so, but then when you're in a position where you get to make your own decisions, even taking into consideration what you've experienced and what you've been through, it may be that your decision making process may need to be different, or maybe the results of what you need could be a little bit shifted. And so,
Right.
having couples be able to have that conversation, I think, is difficult though, because I think you may have to have some hard conversations in there, because maybe my parents' relationship wasn't solid. Maybe I saw my mama beat the hell out my daddy, or
Right.
like, who knows. So, but yeah, to me, when I do couples therapies, I'm like, we start with this kind of foundational thought, but it's like, if you guys, what would be the legacy of your relationship right now? If you could say that as the couple that you've been for 15 years, what is the legacy of your relationship? People can't answer that. You've been together 15 years and you can't answer the legacy of what you all have or what you're building on. Um, so yeah, I just think it's a lost topic, and one that, again, I think sometimes it's just difficult to have because we have to have, it forces us to have difficult conversations about where we came from, what we saw, what we want, what we don't want. Um, but that's
And
definitely a necessary conversation. I'm sorry, Eddie.
Okay.
no. And I see difficulty from another arena too. Um, I really think that there is a lot of social pressure for uniformity. I think there is a lot of social pressure to react this way in a relationship, to
Mm-hmm.
expect this thing in a relationship, to have this thing. You know, I mean, when you think about the Portia thing, you can't even get men to look at it objectively. You can't even get women to look at it objectively. Everybody's supposed to respond in a certain way, and if you don't respond in this way, you're an outlier and you're gonna get roasted because this is how you feel. You know, I mean, when it come to Kevin Samuels talking about this high value man that women's supposed to be trying to get, and talking about men trying to figure out how to help men get that, like, you got people trying, being herded into these ways of thinking that are keeping people from thinking independently in their relationships, and keeping them from saying, this is what I want in my relationship, this is what I should be for my relationship. It's more so, this is what I should be for any relationship, and this is what I should be. They're making it a mass generalization of what marriage and love and relationships are supposed to look
Absolutely.
like, and it's putting us to a point where we are afraid to think or do something different because of how we will be looked at. The essence of toxic masculinity is not is the problem with it is how men look at men. You know, me needing help ain't because women gonna see me. It's because other men who don't need help is gonna look at me as less than, and it's gonna impact my self-worth. And I think that's what happening in a relationship. We're looking at those relationships next to us, and we're afraid to do something different because we don't want our sisters in their relationship, our cousins in their relationship, our friends in their relationship looking at us and say, what you doing, girl? You know what I'm saying? That we're afraid of that. And so I think it's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of social pressure on conformity in that way. And that's just another barrier to looking at our old relationship. Even the conversation about, you know, why we ain't doing it like the old school used to do it. You know, your grandmama and granddaddy used to stay together for 40 years. You know,
Yeah.
that's social pressure. They don't talk about the context of why she stayed, why she couldn't leave, and all the shenanigans
Mm-hmm.
granddaddy was into. That, you know, my grandmama shot my granddaddy. He had to have his leg amputated. They stayed together after that, but he had one less leg. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
nobody talk about that part of it, you know. So, but I think it's a lot of social pressure to just be this one thing, and we
Mm-hmm.
don't have the freedom to be what we want to be in that regard.
I will say I like both of those perspectives. Social pressures versus social norms, which may not be norm anymore. Like now, norms may be more of, everybody has somebody, that type of thing, or everybody is, you know, in this successful situation with somebody. We're all doing life with somebody. And I think for me that was more of it. Like if you have every other area of your life that is pretty well full, it's well filled, it's well oiled, it's operating, it's going good. But then there's that piece, there's that relationship piece, but you saw somebody do it right. It may not be a social expectation, or it may not be that, hey, I'm trying to be traditional, but it works. I see something that works. People want something that works. Like we see enough that doesn't work, but so we want something that does work. So let me go back to the whole Portia thing, because that's the only way we've referred to it. I'm going to tell everybody. I don't know if you all have been following it or not. I'm quite sure. I don't care which generation you're in. I'm sure you've heard something about Portia Williams. I was going to say Portia Stewart, but is William was it Stewart at one point? I don't know. Anyway,
It
was it?
was. She was married to Cordell Stewart. That was her first marriage. She was Portia Stewart,
Okay,
but I
yeah,
think
that's what
her
I thought.
maiden name is Williams.
Gotcha. So yeah, she went back to Portia Williams, and Portia Williams is a reality TV star. That's what she's known as now on the Real Housewives of Atlanta. And I will say this: I said it on the air earlier in the week that Portia was just in the news for something positive not too long ago. She was arrested while protesting the murder of Breonna Taylor. So she was an activist. So like this is somebody that has some substance, right? That has some sense of connectivity to what's happening in the world. But reality TV may not be so realistic. So there was this couple that came on the show in the past season, and they were introduced at, well, the female Fallon was introduced as Portia's friend. That was the caption. Just like we have these captions at the bottom of the screen, we have that, we have that, we have these different captions. They put Portia's friend. So automatically people thought that Portia was the reason that she was on the show. Since then, Portia has come out and said no. But anyway, she brings her husband. They come on as a couple. Portia, they go over the house, they kick it a little bit, whatever, whatever. This couple, I want to say the husband is 56, the wife was 31. Portia is somewhere in the middle. Okay, so I want you to keep that in mind. Then I want you to keep in mind the fact that it's a reality TV show. Keep that in mind. But the other part of all of this is Portia just had a baby with a guy that's only her child's father. I don't know that they had ever saw a serious relationship or not, but they had a baby together. And then this girl and her husband come to the show. He files for divorce in January. Okay. February and March pass. And then in April, they actually separate. In May, just the other day, Portia says that she's now engaged to this man. He's proposed to her after they've been together for a month. Okay. So after they've been together for 1 month, he proposes. And now this is a thing. And so that's what everybody's talking about. So love at first sight, mental health with relationships and things like that. What are we seeing? What's going on?
I think so. In accordance with that, the way that I'm seeing this interpreted is that people aren't able to consider. Now, I don't know the case. I don't think many people know the case. The only way people seem to be able to process this is that when she first saw her friend's man, she had eyes on him and said, "I'm gonna get him." People are not considering that it could possibly have been a fine boundary until that relationship ended and then the connection picked up. But that's that social pressure. The social pressure don't allow something like that to be sensible because we're looking at how much time it took between these things. I mean,
Yeah.
these people getting up in the end of their life. You know what I'm saying? Like, marriage come much quicker when you at that age. For a lot of people, especially people who are successful, if you look at a bunch of different relationships, they marriage happened quick. I think that especially in the Black community, we just used to knowing people who dated for 10 years and never married and then finally tied a knot, with their 10-year-olds at the wedding with them. We're used to that. And so I think that we put a time limit on how quickly or how slowly that somebody's supposed to love. And all I'm saying is that social pressure makes us look at this situation in one way when it could be it could be more appropriate than people are trying to make it seem inappropriate, because the way people are responding is that's why you don't let nobody around your man, because as soon as they see him, they know they're gonna get him from the first time they see him. It's like, I don't know. That's your trend. Like, if a whole group of, like, I came from a small hometown, you know what I'm
Okay.
saying? So if I could put together a whole chart of all the people I know who have intermingled with other people I know, who got kids by other people I know, who are still friends and play cards with and drink with each other. It's only it's only a certain size group you can be around before you just have to fly to another state just to find someone. Like, we're going to end up, entangling with the people in our environment. And
I
I
get
just
what you're
imagine that's a
saying,
small
but
circle. I ain't saying it's okay. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm
that's
just
just one
pointing
way to
out
look at
people's
it.
inability to look at the possibility that it's okay versus people saying it's just a problem
Okay.
in every
That's
sense
one
of the
that's one way
word.
to look at it. That's one way to look at it. Courtney and Tegan, what are your thoughts?
Listen, Tegan's not the quiet, sweet baby she was like a couple months ago. So when this bottle is over with, I may have to mute.
She's gonna cry.
So here's my thing. From a therapeutic standpoint, y'all ain't been to nobody's couple counselor, not within a month. And if
At
you think
all.
that I think that there has been some true thought put into the idea that you all are about to engage in a forever relationship, knowing all the other components, y'all got reality TV, you have this social media presence, this guy is a multimillionaire, so you've got your business. So there's, and not to say that this can't work. I question how much intentional work have y'all put into the idea that within this month we're about to be engaged?
We're deeply in love. I think it's no, we're I can't even think of what her exact words were, but it was something very heavy for this time frame of a relationship, especially considering that, both of them are coming out of something. And we have a few more minutes, and I kind of want to just look at that part of it. Who's to say what a feasible time is for people to move in relationship or from relationship?
It ain't nobody for to say but that couple. So back to the idea of if the two of them, say that, hey, within this month, that they're ready. If it was a week, if it was 2 weeks, I just would like to know that there was intentional thought put into this. And the therapist in me says, allow somebody to put some perspective into what the two of you have, just so that we can have some conversation about some things that maybe you didn't consider, or maybe y'all didn't have a conversation about. Let me walk alongside of you. We do that. So if y'all decide y'all want to get married, a week after meeting, that's fine. Let's just have these important conversations. And I don't believe they had that. So, and that doesn't make the situation right or wrong. I just let people marry when they want to be married. I still just wish, as a therapist, that the idea of marriage carried the significance and the importance and the
What it is, right?
say it again.
Of exactly what it is. Like
Yeah, like that's all I'm saying. So if y'all are gonna do this, do this. But I just hope that it's genuine and that it's real. If the two of them are gonna, take this leap to be married, and that's with anybody. If I don't care when you decide you want to do it, just make it mean something. And I like I said, just from a therapeutic standpoint, it's just so easy to go get that piece of paper and make that commitment, and not really stand for anything and not mean anything to people anymore.
And
TK, you got
I
some
think
thoughts?
from a
Yes, she looking like, yeah. What you think?
Don't ask her because she'll get to talking for real. Go ahead, Eddie. I'm sorry.
I I think that's accurate, and again, I'm just advocating for us to be able to see it in a different light. I'm advocating for us to see that maybe they are deeply in love, and what we're doing wrongly is putting a time limit on how quickly somebody should love. But with their level of success and or wealth, maybe this is an aesthetic social contract more than anything. And if that's the case, you still supposed to say that you are deeply in love. You know what I'm saying? So that just could be the narrative for what they want you to believe is a loving relationship, which is really a social contract, and or falling in love real quick and getting to that point could be a trauma response on both of their ends. It could be a man who is responding from trauma to a woman quickly by saying yes, and it could be a woman who is trauma responding by saying quickly yes. They could be trauma bonding. I'm just encouraging us to look at all of the different components of how this relationship may have happened. These two people, they just may be playing the parts in their life from the trauma, and this is how it's playing out. They may not have intended to slight their friend and or ex. They just really might be acting out what their childhood experience was, and they just filling in the gaps without thinking about the consequences, because easing the burden of that trauma to them is more significant than the appropriateness or what could be the appropriateness of them other relationships in their lives.
It could also be a publicity stunt. Okay. Courtney, what you got?
Absolutely.
I was just gonna say, and this is away from that, but I like the idea of what Eddie just mentioned, that trauma bonding. So sometimes what that does is it serves such a source of what feels like healing and what feels like this is I'm working through something, that you don't even recognize that this relationship is really feeling a space of avoidance with what you need to be working on with trauma. But you're thinking that you got something fruitful here, when really this is just a means to kind of heal what you think is, or what you don't know is trauma. So again, it goes back to, have y'all had the necessary conversations to make this, a believable, true, real thing. And again, like Eddie said, time frame, I don't think that's our place to judge that. I just want to know that I just would like to believe that it is.
What's the story?
Right.
What's the story? All right, so that's just a hot button topic. I think that's going to continue to develop, just like these other situations. When Nene and Greg got divorced, did they really get divorced? When Wendy Williams just got on TV last week talking about her new dude, and then all of a sudden it didn't work. Um, J Lo and A Rod. Now J Lo has gone back to being Affleck. Like, what's really going on? These are just public people doing everyday people things, because we see these things every day. Um, I want to make sure that you all are well equipped with what you need so that you can make the necessary moves to go forward with your mental health care. And as I flash each therapist, as I flash your stuff, go ahead and speak and give your final thoughts for tonight, and just kind of give people some words of encouragement, or just whatever you're thinking about as far as DMR for Mental May 2021.
So again, as we started, I just feel like, Mental May is kind of that moment to have the difficult conversations. Think about some things as it relates to mental health. And so just playing it back, red flags, those are the things that, there's something about it that raises a question. Have the conversation, ask the questions. If you're on the other side of it, you owe that to other people when they start to ask the questions, to be honest. And I just think, as far as relationships are concerned as well, that, your picture doesn't have to be somebody else's. That be willing to figure out what it is that, is going to be the identity of your relationship. And always, always, always just kind of be thinking about opening yourself up to the idea of allowing somebody professionally to walk alongside of you with some things, just to show you some stuff, or make you help you see some things that maybe you hadn't seen it in the light that we can show you.
Okay, awesome. Restoring hopes.
Listen, I'm just gonna throw this back out there because everybody need to do this work. If you went to Build a Boo or Build a
Mm-hmm.
Bay, whatever suits you, to create the perfect mate for you, then what would you create? What would they look like? What kind of personality would they have? What kind of character traits? What would they have from the people in your life that you love? What would they not have from the people in your life that you have a problem with? You know, we're not going to get all of the things that we desire to have, but we do need a template or a baseline to uh to decide what kind of person we want to be in our lives, instead of just throwing something at the wall to see what sticks. And
That's good.
or unnaturally getting into relationships and trying our best to accept a whole bunch of stuff we don't want because it's a little bit that we like. And also know, is accepting that a trauma response? Is accepting a little bit of something for you better than a lot because nothing is something you're afraid of? These are
Mm-hmm.
conversations that you got to have with yourself, and there's no better time than to do it now. You're going to be finding a lot of Instagram posts, Twitter and Facebook posts on mental health. You might as well get in them comments and see how many people talking about having a therapist. Hopefully it'll make you be more comfortable with trying to go find one for yourself if you ain't got one.
Awesome. I think you all have said everything that needs to be said. This has been an awesome conversation. We've covered so much, like just a wide array of mental health topics that play into our involvement with other people, dating, mating, and relating, and what that looks like from a mental health standpoint. And it may be something that you've never thought about. Like, that ain't got nothing to do with me in a relationship. That has everything to do with you in relationship and the success of your future, how you operate, who wants to be around you. If they want to have children with you, do they want to build with you? Do they trust you with their finances? All of this stuff plays a part into mental health and DMR. So every third Sunday, you can catch us in DMR right here on the show on B94.9 WATV. Every Sunday night, you can hear us talking about something with somebody. So be sure to catch us. If you like the show, share it. Like, let somebody else know what's going on. If you want any of the information, you see the numbers posted, give us a call. Reach out via social media. We are everywhere. Vital Show, Vital Show, Vital Show, Vital Show. Have an awesome night. Enjoy the rest of your mental May, and keep coming back, because for the rest of the month, we are having some awesome conversations about mental health with some great guests. Y'all have an awesome night. Bye bye.